All right, here we go. Welcome into the show. You're watching Philadelphia Eagles now. Chase Sr. here with you. And coming up, my guys in the 2025 NFL Draft. My biggest draft crushes, specifically for the Philadelphia Eagles, who are realistic picks for the Eagles with where they are on the draft board after defeating the Kansas City Chiefs in Super Bowl 59. I do want to talk some overall draft prospects here to start the show and just give you a look at my top 10 big board. These are the 10 players who I believe are going to be the best pros and the safest picks and the most elite players in this draft class. Abdul Carter, edge rusher out of Penn State. Travis Hunter, two-way player out of Colorado. I do think he's going to play both ways. How much, we're not sure, but a stellar prospect too. I think can be elite at both positions. Armand Membu is offensive tackle number 1. Just a great body of work in the SEC. Ashton Jeanty, such a good running back for Boise State. I think the skill set translates to the next level. Mason Graham, really good defensive tackle for Michigan. And by the way, for Abdul Carter, I think that he's a once-in-a-few draft types of player at that edge rusher spot. I just think he's so good and is going to be highly impactful as a rookie. Mike Green, one of my top edge rushers in this class out of Marshall, 17 sacks and 23 TFLs last year. I'm fascinated by the versatility of Jalen Walker because he can be an off-ball linebacker and an edge in obvious passing situations. I think Tyler Warren, tight end out of Penn State, is going to be a perennial Pro Bowler. Will Campbell, is he an offensive tackle? Is he a guard? I think he's a good scheme fit for a team like the San Francisco 49ers. The arms are a little bit shorter, but in the SEC, he played so well. He's a really good athlete, good feet. I think that he can stay at offensive tackle. And then Cam Ward, by far the number 1 quarterback on my big board, coming in there at number 10. So with that, I want to know, who is your biggest Eagles draft crush for Philadelphia going into the draft, which is coming up in 2 Thursdays? Let me know down below in the comment section. Also, a programming alert. This is pretty cool that we're doing this here at Chat Sports. We're doing a company-wide live mock draft on Thursday tomorrow. I'm recording this on Wednesday, April 16th. The show gets underway at 2 p.m. Eastern. All of the different hosts who cover all of the different teams across the NFL will be making their selective picks for their respective teams. You don't want to miss it. It's going to be highly interactive, and of course, I'll be making the picks for Philadelphia. So with that, let's get the official show underway. Coming up, my top draft targets for the Philadelphia Eagles on the offensive side of the football. These are my favorite players in the 2025 draft class that I like for Philadelphia on that side of the ball. And let's begin at the quarterback spot. Of course, the Eagles are set at the quarterback position. Jalen Hurts is coming off a Super Bowl championship where he won Super Bowl MVP. He played his 2 best games in the 2024 season in the 2 biggest games, against the Commanders in the NFC Championship game, against the Kansas City Chiefs in Super Bowl 59. And when you look at the Eagles quarterback depth chart, I think Howie Roseman traded away Kenny Pickett partially because the Eagles as an organization, they really like Tanner McKee. So do I. I think at some point he can be a starter in this league. The Eagles have to evaluate Dorian Thompson-Robinson and see what they think of him in their evaluations. Is he good enough to be QB3? They did bring him in a top 30 visit prior to the draft a couple of years ago when he was coming out of UCLA. He's a dual threat player who I thought was really good with the Bruins under Chip Kelly. He's had some opportunities to start games with the Cleveland Browns. He hasn't necessarily played well. He's also been injured, but clearly the Eagles liked him in the pre-draft process. They liked him enough to bring him in through that Kenny Pickett trade. I think they like him. If they don't, or if he struggles, these are backup quarterbacks who I really like. Now, of note, it's a very thin quarterback draft class, and so years prior, Will Howard, Kyle McCord, Jalen Milroe, they could fall a little bit further in those draft classes. This year, though, I think it's different. I think Howard could go in round 2. Wouldn't be shocked if Jalen Milroe went in round 2. I think Kyle McCord could be a round 3, round 4 guy. Quinn Ewers could go in the 3rd round, 4th round. I think Riley Leonard for sure is going to be more of a late round selection. For Will Howard, played awesome for Ohio State in winning the national championship game. Jalen Milroe's been tied to Philadelphia because of his relationship with Jalen Hurts and how the Eagles have been able to develop him, and Milroe has a similar skill set. Quinn Ewers played in some massive games at Texas throughout his college career, gets way too lazy with his footwork and mechanics, but I love the arm strength, and some of the highs were high, some of the lows were low. I worry about Riley Leonard throwing the football consistently, but he's a really talented runner, and the Eagles could look at him as a player who they could develop into a good passer. The most realistic player, I think, for the Eagles on this list, and the player that I like the most because of the realistic nature, is Kyle McCord. Will Howard actually replaced him at Ohio State, where I think Kyle McCord had to deal with some confidence issues. But he goes to Syracuse and he played awesome football. Completed 66% of his passes, nearly 4,800 yards, 37 total touchdowns to 12 picks. Has that gunslinger mentality. He's not very mobile, so that is a little bit of an issue for him in translating his game to the next level. But inside the pocket, he can be a surgeon and has good enough arm strength to push the ball downfield. As for the running back position, this is one of the deepest running back classes that I can remember in recent memory, and that's with both Penn State running backs going back to school in Kaytron Allen and Nicholas Singleton. Some running backs who I like for Philadelphia: Caleb Johnson out of Iowa, Cam Skattebo out of Arizona State, R.J. Harvey, Central Florida, Dylan Sampson, highly productive at Tennessee, and Jaden Blue. He ran so fast in the pre-draft process. He's a 4.2, 4.3 guy. Some scouts and teams question his love for football, but if he taps into that, he definitely has a lot of ability, but has to secure the football a little bit more. As for a player like Cam Skattebo, I just love the versatility and the toughness and the lower body strength that he has. Caleb Johnson, long body of work. Let's focus in here on R.J. Harvey. The dual threat nature to his game, very impressive, in addition to all of the production. You look at what he's done the last 2 years, more than 1,400 yards in 2023 with 16 touchdowns, nearly 1,600 rushing yards in 2024 with 22 touchdowns. Just has an ability to find the paint and has the ability to catch the ball out of the backfield. I think the dual threat ability to his game is going to make him a really good running back at the next level, where he will continue to be a highly productive player. 20 catches in 2024, 19 catches in 2023. Other running backs to keep an eye on: Quinshon Judkins, the other running back from Ohio State; Bhayshul Tuten, a 4.2, 4.3 guy; DJ Giddens out of Kansas State; and then two really physical running backs who will run you over. They just kick ass and take names: Ollie Gordon out of Oklahoma State and Damien Martinez out of Miami. For Martinez, leaves skid marks on the backs of defenders. I mean, he will run you over and keep it moving. Went to Oregon State, then transferred to Miami. Really good production the last 3 years. I think the Eagles are good at the running back spot. You have Saquon Barkley, RB1, coming off 2,000 yards in the best single season for a running back in the history of the NFL. And then A.J. Dillon and Will Shipley will battle it out for RB2 duties. And I like the Eagles running back room here. Different types of styles for all of these different players. Ty Davis-Price, a player who Philadelphia is high on, a former third-round pick out of LSU. Talented ball carrier, not good as a blocker and pass protection, and can't really catch the ball out of the backfield, which is why I think if the board falls the Eagles' way and they like a back day 2, day 3, I wouldn't be surprised if they took one. My guys at wide receiver for Philadelphia: Jayden Higgins, Iowa State; Elic Ayomanor out of Stanford; Kyle Williams, Washington State; Savion Williams, TCU; Tez Johnson, Oregon. Jayden Higgins is big, physical, can go up and get it, and he's so physical as a blocker downfield. I just think he plays the game the right way. Went to Eastern Kentucky for 2 years, then went to Iowa State. Him alongside Jalen Noel gave the Cyclones a really good 1-2 punch at that wide receiver position. As for Elic Ayomanor, he had really good reps going up against Travis Hunter, who's arguably the top corner in this class, and he really popped in those reps against Travis Hunter and Colorado. And every time I turned on a Stanford game, he was making a play that made you say, wow. He ran very well at the NFL Combine. I didn't expect him to run a 4.4, but he did that. He has to shore up his hands a little bit. Drops have been a little bit of an issue, but he's explosive. He can run. He can take the top off of the defense. He can go up and get it. And he's been a touchdown machine in his college career. High character guy as well. Savion Williams is a fascinating prospect. He's kind of a mesh blend of Cordero Patterson and Deebo Samuel. TCU was really struggling last year. Then they put together a Savion Williams package where they used him as a wideout. He has return ability as a special teamer. He can be used as a running back, a gadget weapon guy, not a great route runner, drops some passes, high contested catch rate, can break tackles and pick up yards after the catch. I just look at him as an overall weapon. Like when players are coming out of high school, they don't have a defined position. They're labeled as athletes. Savion Williams is just an athlete. And I know that Tez Johnson ran slow at the NFL Combine. That was a surprise. And he's extremely light and thin. But when you turn on the tape, he just makes plays over and over again. And if you get him the ball in space, short area quickness, being able to make guys miss, to pick up yards after the catch, and I think that he can be a fun weapon on this Eagles team in a late round selection. I'm not necessarily not going to take him because of the slow 40-yard dash, because he played faster than that. And wide receiver is an interesting position for Philadelphia, and I think it's one of those positions where you're never set. You can always add players. I think if Jahan Dotson got more opportunities, he could play in this league. Played very well in the playoffs when it mattered the most. And then A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith formed to be one of the top wide receiver duos in the National Football League. The Eagles did sign Terrace Marshall last week. Great video by producer Chip. I did a YouTube short on that. He's a former second-round pick and a member of that legendary 2019 LSU National Championship team led by Joe Burrow, where he had really good production that year. To the tight end position, we don't know what the future is for Dallas Goedert. And the tight end spot is one in this draft where Tyler Warren out of Penn State, Colston Loveland out of Michigan, I think are bona fide first-round picks. And they're the top two players at that position. There's a little bit of a drop-off, but this is also a deep tight end class headlined by Mason Taylor out of LSU. Elijah Arroyo is more of a seam-stretching tight end, but has good size, is very athletic. The Eagles met with Gunnar Helm at the NFL Combine out of Texas. Terrance Ferguson is a good player out of Oregon. And then of note, the Eagles hired Scott Loeffler as their quarterbacks coach. He was the head coach at Bowling Green, where Harold Fannin put together one of the best tight end seasons in the history of college football. I think Mason Taylor is a real target for the Eagles. I think his best football is ahead of him. 6'5", 251. Ran a sub 4.7, 40-yard dash. Nick Sirianni said this week what he looks for in tight end prospects: big, physical, athletic. Can they run? Mason Taylor checks all of those boxes, and he's an ascending player who's a natural mover, good catch radius, really good hands as a pass catcher. He can run the seam, track the ball. He's capable of an extended route tree. He needs to improve his technique as a blocker and overall route running, but I think that he can be a better pro as compared to what he did at LSU. Harold Fannin is a fascinating player. He's not that tall. He didn't run that fast, but my goodness, was he exceptional in 2024. You rarely see a tight end with 150 targets and 117 catches at the college level for 1,500 yards and 10 touchdowns. That entire offense for Bowling Green was built around Harold Fannin, and he showed up and showed out. And with Dallas Goedert, you think about what owner Jeffrey Lurie, general manager Howie Roseman, Nick Sirianni said at the NFL owners meetings. They talked about Goedert as if he's not going to be on the team in 2025. He's due $15+ million in cash. He has a cap hit of north of $11 million. He's paid a lot, top 5 highest paid tight end in football, but he's missed a lot of time, and he wants a new contract at 30 years old. So I'm just not sure, when you look at this Eagles tight end depth chart, that the Eagles look at him as being one of their core pieces for the future. And I think they could reset the organization to a certain degree financially, specifically at that tight end spot. You have Grant Calcaterra as a backup, Harrison Bryant, Kylan Granson signed as free agents. To the offensive line, we know Howie Roseman loves building in the trenches. And the Eagles could go offensive tackle at 32. I'd be a little bit surprised if they did that. So these players are more so day 2, day 3 players. Aireontae Ersery, so experienced out of Minnesota. Charles Grant didn't start playing football until his junior year in high school. He was a wrestler. That nastiness shows on tape, but he's so gifted. Anthony Belton is a massive human being and specimen. Cameron Williams, I'd like to see him shed some weight, but he has tremendous size. And then Chase Lundt out of UConn, he's like 6'5", 6'6", just over 300 pounds, but so experienced at the college level. For Ersery, 3-year starter at left tackle, very powerful, doesn't really have natural bend, but he is a good fit in an outside zone scheme, 6'6", 331 pounds, and he moves very well. Long arms, 25 reps on the bench press. For Charles Grant, I'm just fascinated by the player here, and he fits kind of that small school developmental player who the Eagles could draft, develop, and then he turns into a stud. Everything is there for him to be a successful player at the NFL level. Needs to refine some things. Played at a smaller school, but 6'5", 311, long arms, 5'05", 40-yard dash, wrestler. I love that with my offensive lineman. Good technique for a small school guy. And while he played at a small school level, started 41 games in college. Has a tendency to hold, but Jeff Stoutland can figure that out. And then we shift to the interior offensive line. Gray Zabel out of North Dakota State can play any position along the offensive line. I think he's in play for the Eagles at 32. Tyler Booker didn't grade out well as far as the relative athletic score, but he's a really aggressive offensive lineman who will take your soul, and the college tape does not lie. Tate Ratledge out of Georgia, we're going to talk about him coming up. Jared Wilson, Eagles liked him in the pre-draft process. He's a stout interior offensive lineman. And then a mid to late round guy who can play along the interior is Jackson Slater out of Sacramento State. Tate Ratledge, interviewed him at the NFL Combine. Great personality, a part of that Georgia Bulldog pipeline. Very good production and tape along the interior offensive line for Georgia. Graded out very well. Overall PFF grade, pass blocking grade, run blocking grade. Only gave up 1 sack last year. Had 2 penalties. Ran very well at the NFL Combine as well. And I think that he could be a plug-and-play starter at the NFL level and fits the mold for what the Eagles look for in interior offensive linemen. The Eagles still have, I believe, a top 5 offensive line in football. Losing Mekhi Becton will hurt. We'll see if Tyler Steen can step into that role. Jason Kelsey and myself, we both acknowledge he has to be a little bit more consistent as part of that C.J. Gardner-Johnson trade. The Eagles brought in Kenyon Green, who's a former top 15 pick by the Houston Texans. He's been one of the lowest graded guards in football since starting his career, but the ability is there, and you already know that Jeff Stoutland had some say in bringing him in. I want to round out with this on the offensive side of the football specifically. The Eagles are in a position offensively where these players who they draft are not in a pinch to play right away. And as of right now, let's say Dallas Goedert returns in 2025. That's 10 of 11 starters who won the Super Bowl who will be on this roster and starting for the Eagles here in 2025. If you trade Dallas Goedert, you release him, then that's 9 of 11 starters who come back to Philadelphia. Point here being they're in a very good spot on that side of the football looking ahead to this upcoming season. With that, I ask you this. Don't be shy. Tell us, who is an offensive player that you love for the Philadelphia Eagles? Those are my guys. Who are your guys? Let me know down below. Our sponsor for today's show, our friends at Game Time. Last-minute tickets at the lowest price guaranteed and the best app in the ticketing marketplace. You get the best seats at the lowest price. And then once you enter the arena, stadium, or venue, you're going to get the best view as well. Prices drop as the event gets closer. And if you download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code CHATSPORTS, CHATSPORTS, you get $20 off. Terms apply, first purchase only. And here's a great deal for the entire Bird Gang. You can save up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy shows, theater events, and a whole lot more. Thanks to Game Time Picks, it makes last-minute ticket buying easier and faster than ever by quickly highlighting the best deals in the stadium. Zone deals are cool because you can save even more when you choose a section and you let Game Time choose the seats. You want to go to a Philadelphia Phillies game, they currently have a homestand at Citizens Bank Park. Plenty of seats available at the best park in Major League Baseball. So download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code CHATSPORTS, CHATSPORTS for $20 off. Terms apply. First purchase only. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. We'll put that link down below in the show notes and attached to the pinned comment of today's Philadelphia Eagles. Now, all right, we move forward on today's show. Here on Philadelphia Eagles Now, we continue to ramp up our draft coverage in the lead up to the 2025 NFL Draft, which is only days away. Earlier on in the show, we took a look at my top offensive draft targets for the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, I want to take a gander at my top draft targets on the defensive side of the ball. Just my favorite players who I think could work out very well for the Birds. Let's begin at the edge rusher spot. I'm very high on Mike Green out of Marshall. James Pierce out of Tennessee has a very similar game and build to Mike Green. Donovan Ezaraku doesn't have the speed, bend, or explosiveness that Green and Pierce do, but the college production's certainly there. Jack Sawyer, not the best athlete with a ton of burst, but I just think that he is a ball player who played in big games. He was able to shine on the biggest of stages and reminds me a little bit of Trent Cole, who is one of the top pass rushers in the history of this Eagles organization. Trent Cole never was a twitchy athlete with a ton of burst, but a relentless motor who could beat you with the bull rush, was very tough and very productive. And then the Eagles are said to be very high on Nick Scorton out of Texas A&M. For Mike Green, some legal issues in the past, some character issues. If that stuff checks out and he falls to the Eagles, this could end up being a tremendous pick. Twitch, bend, size, speed, coming off that edge spot. He can really bend the edge, collapse the pocket, sack production there. Good against the run as well. I like the instincts. 17 sacks last year and 23 TFLs. Both of those numbers led the country, and he also logged 59 pressures for James Pierce, first-team All-SEC player the last 2 years. He's a little bit lankier than Mike Green, but my goodness, at 6'5", 240, 250, he clocked a sub-4.5 40-yard dash. 55 pressures and 52 pressures the last 2 years, including really good sack numbers. And then for Donovan Ezaraku, a player who the Eagles have liked and shown interest in the pre-draft process, I think he's a good scheme fit as an edge rusher for Vic Fangio. 16 and a half sacks alongside 60 pressures playing in the ACC for Boston College in 2024. For Jack Sawyer, again, he's not going to wow you with his athleticism, but he's just a grinder out there who plays until the end of the whistle. 64 pressures. There's something to be said for that in 2024, alongside 9 sacks, 6.5 sacks, and 37 pressures in 2023. And in the Big Ten, you're going up against some really good offensive linemen week in, week out. For Nick Scorton, he's been highly productive. He is a really good athlete. He has some defensive tackle, defensive end type of versatility. 5 sacks, 36 pressures this past year, and then 10 sacks and 42 pressures at Purdue in 2023. Other players I like at the edge spot: Jordan Birch, Oregon; Landon Jackson, long athlete out of Arkansas, transferred from LSU; Olu Oladeju out of UCLA. Josiah Stewart, highly productive at Michigan. And then Braden Swinson. Don't sleep on him out of LSU. I think that he could be an excellent player under Vic Fangio. Let's talk more about him because I think a lot of people are sleeping on him, and I think that he could be a gem for Philadelphia. 6'4", 255, arms of 33-3 ace. He is a read and react rusher who I think is a really good scheme fit, best suited as a stand-up 3-4 pass rusher. He's a little bit of a late bloomer, transferred from Oregon to LSU, but then played very well at LSU. I think he might be a reserve player to start, a rotational player to begin with, but that's what the Eagles need along the defensive line. We stick with the defensive line, and we pop to the interior here at defensive tackle. Walter Nolan, Ole Miss, Kenneth Grant, Michigan, Darius Alexander. He's 24 years old, but I really like him out of Toledo. Alfred Collins is an athletic beast. And then Omar Norman Lott out of Tennessee, a prospect who I'm also very high on. I love the thought of Walter Nolan going to the Eagles in this first round. And I think that he can go anywhere from the Niners at number 11, or he could fall to the Eagles at 32. Some people don't like his personality or his character. Some people have said in the pre-draft process, all of that has checked out. Didn't work out for him at Texas A&M. He goes to Ole Miss for 2024. Big NIL pickup for the Rebels under Lane Kiffin, and that program loved him. Former #1 overall recruit in high school. He's explosive, twitchy, and violent at 300 pounds. He's good against the run. He's really good as a pass rusher. He can help you replace Milton Williams. I love the motor and the way that he plays the game. The pass rush needs refinement, but those are things that can be worked out and ironed out at the NFL level. Other defensive tackles who I think could be in play for the Eagles who I like. Shamar Turner, Texas A&M. They were loaded up front. TJ Sanders, South Carolina. Aeneas Peebles. He's a little bit smaller as a defensive tackle, but he's fast at the line of scrimmage coming off the snap. CJ West, really good athlete. And then Riley Mills can play along the interior or at defensive end in a 3-4 system. The Eagles' edge depth chart here. You have Nolan Smith, Jalix Hunt. The Eagles, of course, are very high on those young players. They signed Josh Uche and Azeez Ojulari in free agency to one-year contracts. I think Howie Roseman is going to pick an edge rusher very early in this draft because they frankly need to. And then along the interior here, and obviously it always depends on the front for Philadelphia under Fangio, Moro Ojomo, one of the highest graded pass rushing defensive tackles in the NFL last year. I think he's going to have a big leap in trying to replace Milton Williams. Jordan Davis really came on last year. Jalen Carter, one of the most dominant players in all of football, but there you need some depth pieces. And so you need depth at edge. You need depth at defensive tackle. You need young players who you can develop. This is also a great draft class at edge and at defensive tackle. So expect Howie Roseman to address the defensive line very early in this draft. To the second level of the defense, linebackers, Jahad Campbell, Alabama, Carson Schweischinger out of UCLA. He could be in play as a surprise first rounder. I think he's more of a round 2 guy. Danny Stutzman out of Oklahoma, Jeffrey Bassa out of Oregon, and then Chris Paul Jr., Ole Miss. Mel Kiper has mocked Jahad Campbell to the Eagles in back-to-back mocks. His final 2-round mock and then the combined mock that he did with Field Yates. And if he fell to the Eagles at number 32, I think he's a top 15, top 20 player in this class. So if the Eagles want to go best player available, they might not be able to help themselves. And we're not sure when Nakobe Dean is going to come back. 6'2", 235. He's only 21 years old. Moves very well. 4.52, 40-yard dash. 35 games played, 21 starts while at Alabama. He's big. He can cover ground. He moves well. He can also be used as a pass rusher to bend the corner. And his off-ball instincts still need to develop, but there were plays on tape where he said, okay, we can work with that. There's foundation there for him to be a really good off-ball linebacker at the NFL level alongside Zach Bond. The Eagles have met with Kobe King, linebacker out of Penn State, in the pre-draft process as part of their top 30 visits. The Eagles really like players who have a relative athletic score of 8 or more. He's barely past that threshold at 8'03", 6 foot, just under 240 pounds. He did run a 4.67 40-yard dash, so he's a little bit slower, but the 10-yard split was good. I also really like Teddy Buchanan, the linebacker out of Cal. Sometimes he can struggle with his instincts, but he's awesome in coverage. And he gives me some shades of Fred Warner, a former third-round pick by the Niners out of BYU, who's turned into the best off-ball linebacker in the NFL. Buchanan is an athletic freak. He's twitched up, 9.42 relative athletic score, 6'2", 233. Really good on the bench at 26 reps of 225, so he's yoked in the chest. 40-inch vertical, broad of over 10 feet, and the 40-yard dash at 4.6. He can really run and cover, and we know that Vic Fangio has done a great job of developing linebackers and maximizing those players at that position throughout his entire coaching career. Zach Bond brought back on that contract extension. He got $17 million per year. He was a first-team All-Pro. But we're not sure when Nakobe Dean is going to come back. And then we're not sure about the backup linebackers. I'm high on Jeremiah Trotter Jr., but outside of that, depth concerns at that position. Now we pivot to cornerback. Really good cornerback class as well. Jahdae Barron is the best zone corner in this class. Maxwell Hairston can fly. Trey Amos can run. Jacob Parrish can run really well. Siobhan Revelle, we'll talk more about him coming up, would have been a first-rounder, I think, if he didn't tear his ACL. East Carolina product, can play when he's healthy. When you think about these corners on your screen here, my gosh, they can run really well. Jahdae Barron clocked a sub-4.4 40-yard dash at 5'10", 194. Maxwell Hairston ran a sub-4.3, a 4.28 40-yard dash at 5'11", 183. And I think the Eagles look at him as a really good scheme fit. Trey Amos has some length to him. He ran very well, 4.43. 40-yard dash, and then Jacob Parrish. He might be smaller at 5'9", 191, but he plays bigger than that, and he's really physical, and he has really good coverage skills. 4.35 40-yard dash. As for Revelle, here are a look at his numbers in 2023 when he played a full season. Also has a fascinating background, had to deal with a lot of adversity growing up. Only gave up 1 touchdown in coverage for East Carolina in 2023. Targeted only 43 times all year in 12 games. Gave up 19 catches for 250 yards and only that 1 touchdown in coverage. He had 14 pass breakups, an ability to make a break and make plays on the football, and only gave up a quarterback rating when targeted of 61.2. Unfortunately for him, tore his ACL in 2024. If not, again, I think he would have been a first-round pick. In those 3 games played, 4 pass breakups, 2 picks. One of them came back for a pick 6. In 2022, only played those 9 games as well. So some injury concerns for him, but the Eagles have shown that they're willing to take chances on high-level players who do have some injury issues. Again, a deep cornerback class. And this is why I don't understand why some people have said this draft class, it's really not that good. There is so much depth at a variety of positions in this draft. Other cornerbacks who I like, Noah Williams, Cal, Benjamin Morrison, Notre Dame, Denzel Burke was the most experienced player for that Ohio State team that won the Natty. Upton Stout, smaller player out of Western Kentucky. We'll talk about him. And then Kobe Bryant out of Kansas. For Stout, 23 years old, he's 5'8", 181. 4.4 40-yard dash. But he's a fluid cover corner, has the footwork to play some man, 19.47 miles per hour during the gauntlet, the fastest among all corners. What's interesting is that on tape, he can sometimes lack recovery speed. But with the gauntlet and the 40, he showed that he can run. And despite him being tinier, he's physical, small, with a big wingspan. So he's a sure-handed tackler. And the Eagles at corner, this is a position group with talent, but with some question marks. And how do the Eagles view Cooper DeJean? That could determine what they do in this draft at the corner spot. Do they want him playing on the outside? Do they like him at nickel? I like him staying at nickel because it allows you to use him in a plethora of ways where he can be that Swiss Army knife. And it's crazy that Kelee Ringo is younger than a lot of corners in this class, and he's entering year 3. The ability is fully there for Ringo. Eagles are very high on him, and we know Quinyon Mitchell is an absolute dog. After those three players who you see the images of, Eli Ricks, extremely long. And I'm a fan of him as far as his future, but I think the Eagles could stand to draft a corner as far as depth at the very least. Lastly, the safety spot. Nick Emanwori, an athletic freak. Malachi Starks, another Georgia Bulldog. Xavier Watts, really good player for that Notre Dame team that made it to the Natty. Kevin Winston, partially torn ACL in 2024, but character, length, athleticism to be a high-level player at the next level. And then Andrew McCuba, he was asked to do a lot at Texas, and he fared very well with his plate full for that complex Texas defense. For Emanwori, how about this? A perfect 10 relative athletic score. Sometimes he will over-pursue and miss tackles, so the instincts in the field sometimes are not there. But what an athlete here. 6'3", 220, 20 reps on the bench, a vertical of 43, a broad jump of 11, and then a sub 4.4, 40-yard dash. Long arms at 32.5 inches as well. For Malachi Starks, 6 foot, a $197, loose, fluid athlete, 21 years old, but 42 college starts. A lot of experience. Has the speed to cover ground, a clean pedal. He can diagnose plays. I like the feel and instincts for him. He has intangibles. He can also play special teams. He's not a powerful tackler. And you know what's weird? Not a good relative athletic score at all. I wonder if this causes him to fall down draft boards. A 5.29 RAS. 6 foot, 197, as I said. Yellow in the height. Red as far as the weight. The vertical, not good. That can be measured to take a look at explosiveness, only 33 inches there. And the 40-yard dash, pretty good at 4.5. But everything else was not great. But this is a classic example of a player who, when you turn on the tape, just makes plays. And then the Eagles, in the pre-draft process, they've shown some interest in some of these Penn State safeties. Jalen Reed being another one of them. And he had a relative athletic score of 9. He was the running mate for Kevin Winston Jr. before Winston got hurt. And for Reed, I think he too is a good player. Ran a sub 4.5, 40-yard dash, 5'11", 211 pounds. His coverage numbers this past year for Penn State, targeted 38 times and gave up 32 catches. So a little bit raw, more of a developmental player who I think is more so a day 3 type of guy, but a player who I think down the road can be a pretty good player. Penn State's done a tremendous job under James Franklin of recruiting and developing players into NFL prospects. And the safety spot, another position where things are a little bit murky, things are a little bit uncertain. Reed Blankenship is one of the more underrated and better safeties in the NFL, but the Eagles traded away C.J. Gardner-Johnson. So do they love Sidney Brown? Will they sign a player like Justin Simmons? The depth pieces, Tristan McCullum, Lewis Seen, Andre Sam, completely unproven there. And so I think safety is a position that the Eagles could target somewhat early in this draft. So my guys on the defensive side of the ball, who is a defensive player that you love for the Eagles. Once again, always appreciate your feedback and interaction down in the comment section.